We're good. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're coming live to you now.
This week on the Squatchers Lounge podcast, we take on the biggest black mark in Bigfooting history. The father of all hoax profiteering, Mr. Ivan Marx. What was his story? What made him do it? And what can we ultimately learn from this situation? Because ultimately, looking at that documentary, I'm thinking, yeah, not so much. And now for the host who's waiting for his constantly tardy co-host, the Reverend Jeff Kelly.
Welcome, everybody, to the Squatchers Lounge podcast. I am indeed your host. They call me the Reverend Jeff Kelly. And over here to my side is the often tardy but always amazing Father Batdorf. How you doing this week, David, buddy?
Fantastic. I just ran in the door, did that intro, and now I'm ready for this topic. I swear I might have studied for 20 minutes, but we're going to be good. This is gonna
We've been studying our whole lives for this one, so it'll be okay. But we can tell by the wife beater that you were running a little short. Yeah. I actually did a little trimming on the barbarian locks here today. Just got to be, there's a little bit too much out there, so we took a little bit off of the top.
You only need so much to keep the warmth in, you know.
Yeah, well, 7,000 feet in this air in June. It's still cold.
Yeah. Those little wispy ones do help to wick off the icy water.
That is very, very true, especially at night when you're going out. This week has been a very strange week for news. There really hasn't been a lot out there. However, there is one thing that I wanted to bring up from the fringe news this week is this ridiculousness. The Huffington Post Weird News reported the world's most terrifying creature, Bigfoot, is going to be exhibited for the first time ever by the Tiny Top Circus. I don't know even what to go with that. I mean, really? Has anybody heard of a capture of a Bigfoot by the Tiny Top Circus? You'd think they'd want to promote the capture of it first.
Well, Tiny Top Circus, in accordance with R. Dyer, I don't know.
Right. Well, I'm wondering, what happened to Hank? The whole rig and everything got stripped of that stupid vinyl coating that it had on it and sold. And, so we're kind of curious as to what did happen to Hank. I don't know who actually has him or was poor Hank. It wasn't his fault. But, June 7th in New York City, the Tiny Top Circus is going to present the world's most terrifying creature, Bigfoot, for the first time ever before he's released back into the wilds. And I kind of thought this was appropriate.
Live.
Right, live. Yeah, he's going to be there. I mean, so we're kind of keeping an eye on this. We'll see if it really, what is it, the three foot man-eating chicken? You show up with a little person with a bucket of KFC. I don't really know what's going to go on here, but I'm hoping the Huffington Post actually covers it. I like the Huffington Post Weird News. I can't believe anything it is. It's like the Weekly Weird News used to be, but it's fun. You can't believe everything you read, people. And, I'm gonna comment about it and just, well, damn it, it's not exactly the right place to do it, but it is kind of paranormal. This whole crap about these girls stabbing Slender Man, stabbing a girl for Slender Man 19 times is horse shit. Okay, I don't know what's going on in that town, and I don't know what's going on with those little girls, but if they're that mentally ill, they should have been locked up long ago. And if people are talking about this whole bullying thing, if we would stop teaching children that the world is a happy, happy place, and that everything's fair, and that everybody wins, nobody loses, and that they don't keep score, we won't end up with 40-year-old virgins thinking happy, happy thoughts running the country in 4 decades, because that's what we're churning out. Sorry to say it, people, but it's time to get a realistic grip on what you teach your 5-year-old, not your 15-year-old, what you're teaching your kindergartner about the world. Okay? It's not Nemo. It's not Disney. It's not friggin' The Sweet Life on Deck. Okay? The sooner they realize that, the more prepared for the real world these kids are going to be, and the stuff that they see on television they're not going to act out upon for Slender Man.
Yeah. And if you're into Slender Man, that's fine, but you might want to make sure that your kids are on the same board with you as far as what Slender Man might want you to do or might not want you to do with the knife.
Yeah, this really comes down to probably what the parents need to be checking themselves what they're watching while their 12-year-olds are hanging out in the living room with them. I mean, I know you want to watch what you want to watch, but you got a 12-year-old that you're responsible for in the room, and you shouldn't be watching South Park. I'm guilty of it. I used to watch Family Guy with my 5-year-olds. That was a horrible thing to do, but I did it. Although, just like we did when we were children, we watched Looney Tunes, and those jokes were so far above our heads that we really didn't understand them anyhow until much later. Family Guy is the same type of thing. But when you're watching the paranormal shows and the monster shows and now Mountain Monsters is so popular, he's showing up on Bigfoot shows. Somebody was talking to one of the clowns from that show. Next thing you know, your 12-year-old's out with the brand new shotgun that he got for Christmas shooting at the Wolfman that just happens to be your neighbor out in his buckskin coat changing the garbage cans.
Exactly. So again, and like what is, but you can't blame it all on the parents, but what cryptids shouldn't be an excuse for that sort of behavior. I'm sorry, if you stab somebody 19 times and you say it was for Slender Man, I mean, that might be deferring.
You've got some serious priority issues in your life, and you're sacrificing your friends, the Slender Man. That's what I'm going to say about that. It's a very, very sad thing. I wish the parents of that all the luck in the world, that all of that goes away, and that the horrors that become that just don't continue to go on. And that somebody gets a grip here, people. You got to take responsibility for your kids from the time they come out of the chute, not from the time that they come out of high school. I see so many kids around here in California, it's kind of scary. They're out playing in the courtyard with absolutely no parental supervision whatsoever. There's 15 kids under the age of 10 right now outside of my window, not a parent in sight. That kind of scares the crap out of me, knowing what we know about the world today. I don't know what to tell you. I just know what I plan on finishing my kids' education up with. And we got a little squatcher coming out of Father Batdorf there, the little Eli. Oh my God, he's so cute. Yeah. Jesus, dude, that kid gets any cuter. He's just going to explode. Big. Yeah, dude, he's getting huge, outgrowing everything. I can't wait till he's walking around and we can see him with his little squatch.
That's going to be awesome.
You got to get him one of those colanders and make him a parabolic dish, or one of those little umbrellas and make him an umbrella parabolic dish, and that'll be the first thing he can run around with. Perfect for him.
I think mid-tarsal break is a little bit complex for the first word, but I'm working on it.
Well, there you go. All right. Well, on to the topic at hand tonight. Who the hell was Ivan Marx? Why is he important? And what the hell does he have to do with Tom Biscardi? That's what we're here to talk about tonight. And, the cool thing about it is this can go either way. If you go back to the old schoolers like Peter Burns and Krantz, Dr. Krantz, and even Dr. Meldrum and Dr. Bendernagel, these people have all been around Ivan Marx before his death and worked with him in one way or another, and they all had their own comments about it. Now, if you don't know who Peter Marx is, Ivan Marx is, well, of course, that's not going to work for me tonight. That's okay. I have another version of it. It's the guy that's on the intro tonight, the picture for tonight. It's this guy. That is Ivan Marx, a long-time claimed Bigfoot researcher. Now, he came onto the scene roughly 1971-ish was really the first time he got any fame. Prior to that, 69, 68, 67, around the Patterson film, he was actually doing something related to Bigfoot.
That's what they say. Like he said the film that he has in his documentary and a lot of the pictures and stuff that he got was it's 10 years in the making, and so that puts it prior to that. But really, like, where people had contact with him, or like the first time when somebody was it's documented that he did anything was probably in that 67. So it's more like 4 years from when the documentary was filmed. But I mean, there's a lot of controversy surrounding this guy, and it's really interesting. He started in California and then moved to Washington. They had all these amazing things happen. It's an interesting story, to be sure.
Well, according to his IMDb biography, IMDb says Ivan Marx was an animal tracker, woodsman, hunting guide, explorer, adventurer, accomplished nature photographer, and dedicated Bigfoot hunter. Ivan first began his Bigfoot research in the 50s. He was involved in the Bossburg, Washington Cripplefoot track, which we're going to get back to finds in 1969 in November, and claimed to have shot actual footage of a crippled Sasquatch in October of 1970. How convenient. Mark briefly worked for 3 months for renowned Bigfoot researcher Peter Byrne, who later became one of Ivan's biggest and most vehement detractors. Moreover, Ivan also collaborated with his famed physical anthropologist Grover Krantz, and in 1976 Krantz narrated, co-produced, and appeared as himself in the lively and enjoyable documentary The Legend of Bigfoot.
The Legend of Bigfoot, indeed.
Ivan also was a cinematographer on this picture. He subsequently followed this feature with 2 more documentaries, In the Shadow of Bigfoot and Bigfoot Alive and Well in '82, as well as Marx. No, that was the last one. Marx and his wife Peggy lived in Bernie, Shasta County, California, although widely denied as a fraud by many Sasquatch experts. Ivan always insisted that his movies and photographs of Bigfoot were real, and he was also a mentor to controversial fellow Bigfoot researcher Tom Biscardi. Ivan Marx died in 1999. Yay.
Yeah, like let's not like belittle a man's death, but like again,
no, wasn't making a joke that he died. I just meant that the biography was.
But no, but like no, that's not what I was saying at all. But but let's really go back over the contribution and what he did. I mean, for Bigfoot research, and he basically and why Ivan Marx is why we are so, as a community, a Bigfoot community, why we are so interested in what somebody's motives are for like producing evidence. Like, hey, I have photographs of a Bigfoot. Hey, I have sound audio recordings of a Bigfoot. Hey, I have foot track casts of a Bigfoot. What is the purpose of doing that? Because this gentleman, there's about 10 different ways that you can say that he was doing this for his own financial gain, and he never had anything truly substantial to go on. Like, it may have preyed upon other people who had or didn't have, like some interesting things. But that's where that Jeff said, the Biscardi quotient comes in. Like maybe it's just some guy who's trying to do this for financial gain, and he's going to prey upon people who maybe have some good experience, or maybe he's just trying to capitalize on somebody who doesn't have good experience and has a good story.
Here is one of the pictures attributed to our boy Ivan Marx. Now, this is right out of his 1975 documentary, The Legend of Bigfoot. And in this documentary, The Legend of Bigfoot, this particular animal is splashing around in the swampy cabbage waters of California. And they were to be marveled at the fact that he has giant hands that are able to reach down and grab those skunk cabbages and splash around for like no reason whatsoever. This animal was literally like picking up handfuls of water.
Playing.
Oh yeah, it wasn't like a monkey in the zoo playing in the water though. I mean, it was just ridiculously awkward. Whoever was in the costume, I got clips of this, and we'll show it here in just a minute. But just looking at this picture, this is a still shot from a probably Super 8 camera from 1975.
I think most of it was 8mm he filmed.
Yeah, so it's going to be Super 8mm. There's no detail in Super 8 to begin with. If you're more than 10 feet away from a subject, and this is actually zoomed in and cropped, if you're more than 10 feet away from any subject on Super 8, you can forget any fine detail whatsoever. It's the same problem that we had with the Patterson film. However, she at least had a light face that we could later on digitally enhance. His footage was so crappy, no one's ever been able to digitally enhance anything out of it because the suit had no detail to begin with.
the suit may have had incredible detail, but it was all like, and that's one of the interesting things about Patterson Gimlin versus the other. The suit was all one uniform color, like it was all like this black color, and even like with the highlights of the sun and whatever. But you can't see the individual details of any differentiation in the subject whatsoever because it's all the exact same color. And that's one big red flag. The other big red flag is that it's just like this is supposed to be like I forget, there was a description that I was reading of Marx himself saying that this was like a 650-pound creature. Which,
actually, no. The adult that we never actually saw any footage of was a 600-pound creature, but this was the 5'6" juvenile that was running around. That was probably 300 pounds. Now, curiously, the little sack that you see hanging there from him is actually not part of the suit. That's actually something that you're seeing that's behind the animal there. Those are not his dangleberries. Although that would have been hysterical, Marx's suit did not have any nuggets hanging off of it quite like that.
No bean purse.
No, over the last week I've actually watched the documentary 4 different times, again and again.
Sorry.
I know, I'm enjoying it because, God, it's so funny. I mean, it really, really is, and we're gonna get plenty of time. We're gonna continue on this line of Ivan Marx, but oh my gosh, dude, this was just so bad that it was good. Basically, what Ivan Marx did over the course of 1966 to 1971 was any time there was a famous Bigfoot event of any kind, he basically went out and faked the creature that would have been associated with it. So they found some crippled footprints up in Washington, and all of a sudden now Grover's gone out in 1970, a year later, and he's got footage of Cripplefoot. And as his documentary continues on, somehow Cripplefoot migrates all the way to Alaska. So this thing that can barely hobble and get around 20 yards out of the skunk cabbage there is somehow migrating with the geese all the way to Alaska is just hysterical. But like I said, as the documentary continues, if you go back and look at the historical events that went on, basically Ivan heard of a Bigfoot or was involved with a Bigfoot or something happened of it, and he just took that story, put somebody in this horrible suit, and took some video of it and worked it into his documentary. And it took clear up until 1975 to even release the documentary, and I don't even believe it was even published anywhere until 76 to where anybody could see it. And that's because it takes time to publicize and get somebody to actually buy a piece of crap.
Totally. Like, so the interesting thing that I found, like I did some deep dark searching. Like, first off, is that the story behind the piece of footage I'm sure we'll see where the creature looks injured, or like, you know, the Cripplefoot, and like tries to attach to that, and tries to attach to the situation in Alaska, and tries to like this injured Bigfoot was actually recorded. Somebody actually recognized this as not the area that he said it was, but based on, there was a report that he got of a train, like a person who was a conductor of a train said that he hit a Bigfoot, and then all of a sudden, like you know, he said, well, then we went to the scene and we got the footage, and but basically repurposed that. And if you look really closely, all of that footage, you know, the Pacific Northwest is very similar, but all of that footage was actually filmed at the same site, in the same location in Washington, not in Alaska, not in California. It was all filmed in Washington.
Oh yeah, it was all completely the same location. The guy never traveled anywhere.
So he didn't travel to these locations.
He just claimed it.
He repurposed the footage that he had already shot based on this one instance that he was trying to shop. Right, and he was able to repurpose it in a bunch of different locations, and it's really interesting because the actor did the same thing each and every time.
You know, it's almost exactly the same thing as to what Mark Andrews is doing right now. basically taking the same Bigfoot costume, taking different shots of it in different sides of the same hill, and basically just trying to generate money or other documentaries or other interest for other documentaries on that same crappy footage based upon word of mouth and rumor. I mean,
yeah, again, it could have been one day worth of filming, and he's like gone like a year of publicity off of it, right? You know, but
Well,
so that's why Ivan Marx is important, because it shows us, like, historically, that people do this, and then we can see like modern examples with you know with the Biscardis and the what's his name that you were just talking about? Anyway, I've totally forgotten his name already. Mark Anders. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
And contemporary people, that this is something that people do, and people do pay money for it, because I mean, we're interested. We're still going to watch this godforsaken piece of film.
Let's go ahead and take a look at what his presentation to the world really was. I'm going to play it. It's not very long. If it takes me a moment to screen share it, I'll replay it. Let's see here. Is it going to allow me to do that today?
But this is a full-length feature film. I mean, so it does go into the. I forget how many. It's over 60 minutes. I know it's over.
It's an hour. It's an hour and 25 minutes long.
And a lot of it's stock footage of like the hills of eastern Washington and like, you know, cougars, which he had on site, and dogs.
Here we go.
Again with Bigfoot. Unchallengeable proof my theory had worked. It is a migratory animal, and I now have the documentation of its habits I needed.
So, there was the first clip as it came out. I mean,
I have the documented habits as needed. Where were they? How did you have them if we don't see them? It was playing in the water.
But that was the animal in Alaska. He followed the geese to Alaska, their migratory areas to Alaska, and that's where he found the same crippled Bigfoot thingy there. Here, let's. I have more. Oh wait. There's more.
There's more.
That's right. Not only does he have that piece of crap, there's more pieces of crap that he has too. Here is another one of the footages from the documentary. This is Cripplefoot.
Actual footage taken of what is said to be a real Bigfoot.
Skipfoot, I like to call it.
Yes, Skipfoot. Now, mind you, this is not actually the creature that's attributed to Cripplefoot.
Washington. The film has been denounced as a fake by some monster hunters.
Because it's dancing like, I don't know, like singing in the rain. I don't know what this.
Now this is.
Marx, a hunter and maker of nature films, insists on its authenticity. No matter what the Marx film.
So, you know, I mean, like I said, these were used in search of, in time machine whatever the different documentaries were at the time. These were every bit of used as much as the Patterson film was as possible real documented Bigfoot footage.
If you look up real Bigfoot, like in photos on Google, you're gonna get Ivan Marx. Like,
matter of fact,
with the elf ears or whatever, like the same costume that he's using in that particular situation. Let's just get it out now.
You mean this one?
No, they're the like I'm thinking of the silhouetted one with the arm out, like the oh my goodness.
Oh, I think I have that one here too.
Yeah, it's iconic. You can actually see they used a different color in the chest area.
That's the same picture.
But so what we should talk about is that Ivan Marx and his wife, who it's been said that Ivan Marx's wife was actually in the suit. Like, they both worked for Disney for a while. Ivan Marx was actually in charge of like animals and getting them ready, like, you know, training and working with the animals and taking care of the animals and doing other things like that. Like when they had large, like, you know, wild cats and other things on set, that's what he would do. His wife actually worked in making costuming. Problem. This is where why we still to this day look into people's backgrounds. Like, okay, well, this guy who's got all the, like, if you look through the legend of Bigfoot, the documentary, there's a ton of footage of like big cats and other animals just like roaming around this property. Like, wow, this guy must have like a bunch of dead deer carcasses in his lawn all the time. Or maybe he's getting stock footage from his time working for Disney on movies and whatever. We talked about his we'll talk a little bit more about this, but like he and Peter Byrne worked together for a while. Peter Byrne actually called him an amateur cinematographer and a mediocre woodsman. Versus,
this is exactly the time to get into that. So let's go ahead and get into the Peter Byrne connection.
But like everybody's talking about he's a nature photographer and he's a he an avid woodsman. No, like in real life, apparently he's an amateur cinematographer, like, and a mediocre woodsman. You know, you look at his cinematography and yeah, I could do that. And so Peter Byrne, a lot of people don't know a lot about Peter Byrne. That would be a great show to do. Like a pretty legit guy, but maybe one of the first Bigfoot benefactors. Like Peter Byrne was like the first Uncle Wally. He actually paid Ivan Marx for at least 3 months a full salary, set him up, and he went looking for Bigfoot, basically. So yeah, like, you know, so here we have the situation. Like, okay, here's I'm gonna pay you. I'm gonna go out and do this. Ivan Marx tells Peter Byrne about this creature who was hit by a train, and he went and he tracked the creature, and he took his footage. Shows him the footage. It was 3 10-second clips and several stills. And yeah, so okay, well, that's interesting. You know, Peter Byrne's excited. You know, like he's seen, you know, probably in-house projector footage of this. There's not a lot to really tell in this 10-second footage. And then so Ivan Marx basically, after a while, offers to sell Peter Byrne the footage for $25,000, which in the 70s was quite a bit of money.
Like $250K these days.
Yeah. So, you know, Peter Byrne, like, he says, you know, I want to, like, we really need to look at the authenticity of this footage. Like, we want to send it to the professionals, yada, yada, yada. So, in good faith, Ivan Marx, and by the way, this is all in Peter Byrne's own words. This is off of Bigfoot Encounters, like a letter from Peter Byrne. Like, you know, so they wanted to inspect the footage and really get a good look at it, have some professionals take a look at it. So Ivan Marx sent the master copy, sealed in a case, like the original 8mm film, sealed in good faith to them so they could look at the footage. Well, the footage never showed up. They had a private viewing. People were realizing that, okay, well, this location that you're filming in, you know, is like my neighbor's ranch property. It's not where you say it was filmed. By the time that Peter Byrne wanted to approach Ivan Marx and say, well, so are these allegations true? He had already fled town, and basically, like, you know, never to be heard from again. And eventually, Peter Byrne opens this good faith film because he's assuming that it's going to be hoax or that it's going to show something that he doesn't want them to see. And it ends up being, in Peter Byrne's own words, a black and white film of Mickey Mouse. for about 75 feet of black and white cuts of Mickey Mouse on film. So that's the kind of, and then years later comes out with this documentary.
Right.
So that is the reason why Peter Byrne is known to be his biggest detractor. Like, said, you know, don't listen to this guy. Like, anything that has to do with this guy, you know, and caution, you know, Grover Krantz, don't look at the Cripplefoot because it is attached to this guy. You know, everybody, don't look at this guy because he tried to Mickey Mouse me. Like,
that's right. Well, now that's exactly the good point to get into the Cripplefoot connection. Now we understand pretty much who Ivan Marx was. He was a capitalist Bigfoot promoter. self-promoter, trying to make as much money off of Sasquatch as he could because he understood what it was to be in the entertainment industry.
He is the reason why we pick so hard on people like who are self-promoting without evidence, like
this
standings of the world. Like
right.
This is the beginning.
And this is going to be exactly why we do this. Let's go ahead. Let me go ahead and bring this up the other way so that it's so I know it'll work. As you saw on the cover photo for the show tonight, we had a picture of Mr. Ivan Marx and him holding a copy of Cripplefoot, the cast. Now, he did not find the Cripplefoot trackway. He technically didn't have anything to do with the Cripplefoot cast trackway at all.
And the image that he filmed was of apparently a juvenile Sasquatch, not the 650-pound one that made that also got hit by a train that was crippled.
Right. Now this is according to God, I'll post the link after the show. I can't even pronounce the name of the website. But among Bigfoot advocates, when mentioning the name of Ivan Marx, what usually comes up in mind is the Cripplefoot trackway, to which Marx is most popularly associated. To say that the Cripplefoot tracks were the first Bigfoot tracks found in Bossburg would actually be entirely accurate. Would not be entirely accurate, and yet not necessarily incorrect. Author Kenneth Wiley, in his book of Bigfoot, claims to have heard of BBC interview in which a gentleman named Ray Pickens confesses to have faked Bigfoot prints around Colville, a town southeast of Bosberg. One source has the interview possibly occurring in 1968, and another source claims the interview took place in 1971, the same year that Pickens had confessed his hoax to several newspapers. Either way, since the Cripplefoot tracks were discovered in 1969, the Pickens hoax would be too early or too late to have any nefarious association with the Cripplefoot tracks at all. Because the newspaper interviews took place in 1971, this person is inclined to believe the BBC interview also took place in 1971, that's logical thinking, and so they feel comfortable stating that the Cripplefoot tracks are most likely the first recorded alleged Bigfoot tracks in that area of Washington. Now, the Cripplefoot tracks were reportedly found shortly after Marx's arrival to Bossburg by a Carroll County butcher named Joe Rhodes, who, according to the majority of the reports, appeared to have told no one but Marx about his discovery. Marx's association with Rhodes is blurry. A few anonymous sources claim that Rhodes gave meat scraps to Marx's hunting dogs to explain their acquaintance. While it's not unlikely that Marx would have owned hunting dogs, I could find nothing that verified him owning them in Bossburg. A few anonymous sources also claim to quote newspaper articles state that Marx was training hunting dogs. So that would be why possibly this guy Rhodes, the butcher in town, found the Cripplefoot tracks and told Marx about them, who was then taken to them to the discovery. So what we are not saying is that the Cripplefoot tracks are fake. We are not saying that. I'm not saying anything. We're not making any declarations to the authenticity of the Cripplefoot tracks whatsoever, because the actual discovery of them is blurry. The only thing that we're stating here is Ivan Marx's involvement after the fact in filming his crippled Bigfoot in 1970, exactly 1 year after these tracks were supposedly found by Joe Rhodes and led Marx to the find.
So, again, led Marx to what? And what was Marx going to Washington for? You know, this other gentleman was making these tracks. This is different than, but not totally dissimilar to, and, you know, is kind of the crux of the skeletal morphology of the foot of Bigfoot. Krantz went crazy with this piece because he could potentially see where the bones would align, and created a model like the modern model of the Sasquatch foot.
I actually have those. So let's go ahead and bring that up. I
Yeah.
I have a copy of the model of the foot. Here's a model of the, now, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was Dr. Meldrum who actually drew what the possible bone structure might look like in a Bigfoot that might have an injury as such. Am I mistaken on that?
Well, with this picture, like without the proper accreditation, I don't know, but like I know that Krantz went through the same process here.
Okay. So they agree. Let's say that they agree that a foot with a disorder, a discerning disability like this could exist.
So yeah, and correct. You can make a logical if-then statement. If this foot is crippled, then the bone structure would probably line up to a healthy foot as such. Now, what's happened in modern Bigfootery is that we've just taken this as gospel, right? And this is where all the bones line up because, and then you're like, wait, no, that's like Todd Standing saying that all tree breaks that go to the east down the logging road it means something. Like this is.
And to be completely honest, what we know now about tracks is the fact that they are not an exact copy of the foot that's in the ground. They are a record of what that foot did while it was in the ground. What if this guy slipped just a little bit and repositioned his foot and put his toes down to grasp him? Would be a complete explanation for this track rather than he's crippled.
Exactly, or that it was going maybe downhill, or like, and it just smushed everything.
Or he stopped for a moment and repositioned his foot as he took off down the hill. His ankle needed to turn, a muscle popped, who knows? A thorn scratched him wrong. I mean, there's a gazillion reasons that this doesn't have to be a Cripplefoot Bigfoot.
Exactly, and it shows a nice dynamic footprint cast, but the way that it's been presented the entire time, like, I mean, it was Cripplefoot from the beginning, like as if we all just stamp our feet, boom, 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 exactly down on the ground. That's not how it works, like.
Or as if
I dare you to try to walk like that for a mile. No, it's not going to work for you. So the dynamics of that footprint, not knowing what substrate it came out of, not knowing what the angle of the terrain was that it came out of, not knowing whether it had to jump over something just before it landed on that foot or something, like the story is completely lost, and what we're left with is basically, okay, this depiction, which is imaginative and it's good, and it basically, like, on the right hand side here you see basically a human's foot put into a proposed Bigfoot footprint, and then on the other side you have the bones basically put into this Cripplefoot position, which obviously with all that space in the tarsals on the outstep of the foot, that's not a foot that you can walk on.
No, that would fall apart. Yeah, that would just flop right over.
Like this is almost an argument against the fact that can't be how the bones were, or how that foot actually looks, based upon the other model.
And we're not saying we're experts here. We're just raising questions upon what we've been forced upon as this is what happened back then. And we're trying to take a new look at what the old Bigfooters were thinking back then and applying that to what we have now and the information that we have now. And that's really what this series is about. Back then they saw this footprint, and one of them was all distorted, so immediately that animal had to be crippled. And if we were to find a set of Bigfoot tracks like this today, the first thing we would be looking at is what type of substrate it is in. Was there something under it? Is there something over it? Was there a log right in front of it or after it? There's a gazillion questions to ask why this print is distorted before you go, oh, he's crippled. And unless you saw the guy in Ivan Marx's Bigfoot suit with the crippled foot on the side of it actually leaving the prints behind, then I would say it's probably okay to assume that it was a crippled Bigfoot that left these tracks behind. Before that, I say there's a gazillion other things to look at.
Now, if you could find that footprint with viewing a crippled subject in that spot prior to that, even if it wasn't, even if it was just a story, would lend a little bit more credence to this like random track found without a subject, to lead us to this gospel feeling of how this foot is supposed to be.
Now,
on
the next one, here's the next picture. Now, this is the actual casts of said animal. Now, like I said, I still don't see a crippled animal here.
Yeah, because you have to remember they didn't dump their feet into plaster. We're not making a mold of their feet.
Right.
What happened on one side is not always what happens on the other side. I mean, we've all walked in sand, and like when you hit a rock on one side, you roll your foot to the outside, and you defer your weight so you don't bruise the soft part of your foot. I mean, so what? There's so many different things that could happen to make one the other, but to define foot morphology based upon that it's crazy. I mean, it was a good shot. It's an if-then statement, and a lot of people have just and I'm pretty sure because Krantz and Meldrum, they're all very careful about how they word things. Mm-hmm. And they always
coined
have
a new
been.
phrase. It's called they Van Daniken things. They don't make statements, and that's one of the things that I learned about that Russian Yeti thing, and we'll close out on that later. But they Van Daniken things by just asking questions. What if? What if this creature had a limp foot? What if this creature had a disformed foot? What if? Then that would be explanation for why its cast was so messed up.
So again, why so many people take a lot of these, the Krantzisms and the Meldrumisms as gospel, and this is how it is because, well, Dr. Meldrum, said so. Well, so if somebody who has that degree and has that doctorate is using the words if and then, or even and, extrapolating in any sort of way, then that's not science. That's a question. That's and that's prior to hypothesis, which is definitely prior to theory, which is definitely prior to fact. So you're 4 steps off of fact. So don't just say because Cripplefoot looks like this, you put it next to the other foot. If the bones are to line up in these 2 feet, and this is a crippled foot, then these are where the joints have to be. That's not even a that's not even hypothetical, really. It's more of a question. Is this? Is this what the Sasquatch foot looks like? That's what we're going for. And so really remember that we don't have that much data to go on, and we can't be making declarative statements until we have a way to make declarative statements. And we pick on Meldrum, we pick on Krantz, and I pick on his Gigantopithecus hypothesis and all of these other things. It's only because it's one step. It's still a question. It's not a hypothesis. Is the North American ape of legend Gigantopithecus? That's a good question. I'll be on board with that every day. That's a good question.
Well, and one of the things that I noticed too, he always put out was, well, if there's a large primate in the woods of North America and the Pacific Northwest, then there's a possibility that it's related to the Gigantopithecus who existed in Asia prior to the crash of the Bering Sea land bridge.
Yeah, so that's not even that. Well, it's a hypothetical in its base, but it's a question. It's a hypothetical question. It's not even a fully thought out question.
Right, and and his examination of
the question would be this corpse over here kind of looks like Gigantopithecus. Is it?
Right, and his explanation for his involvement into it is there's enough anecdotal evidence in tracks that show a living foot leaving these tracks behind, which is his specialty in, the morphology of foot and locomotion of animals, not just humans. he's a specialist in a lot of locomotion, and that makes it important to be able to say that the largest amount of Bigfoot evidence we collect are Bigfoot tracks, or possible Bigfoot tracks, because I would probably say that 70% of what's out there is just a smudge in the mud.
It lasts longer than your opportunity to take a picture. It lasts longer than a Bigfoot howl. It lasts longer than pretty much anything. Decomposables like scat and flesh and bone, even like a footprint, can last longer than bones can if they're being scavenged and spread. So that makes the most sense. And nobody can take away from Dr. Meldrum. I'm not gonna if he says, hey, that looks like a bear print, I'm gonna be like, okay, you know better than me, because you've looked at he's looked at more Sasquatch footprints than I have, to be fair, and a lot more differences in morphology between the two. But you have to be careful about us as the community taking what he's saying as gospel when he's being quoted on a lot of these television documentaries, doing really great if-then statements, questions, like hypothetical questions. It's not even a hypothesis; it's a hypothetical question. And to not take that too seriously and go too far, and even like people say it's a Gigantopithecus theory, and Dr. Meldrum will say no, it's a null hypothesis. Well, I'll say it's a hypothetical question. It's an if-then that isn't even fully thought out yet. We can't actually ask against anything. If we were to ask against anything, you might and I tried to ask against things in the with the footprints and looking at the development of bipedalism and whatever, and I come up with my own null hypothesis, which is something that's not probably paunched and probably closer to a human lineage in the last 3.5 million years. And Dr. Meldrum is like, well, that's definitely a possibility too. It's another hypothetical question, but you can't,
unless unless Dr. Meldrum has some form of data or information that's lacking out to the rest of the Bigfoot community, such as some astronomically wonderful Bigfoot picture that we've not been privy to see, and he can make some type of basis based upon the animal's bone structure that we've never seen, then, of the available data that's out here, our guess is as good as any. And that's the fact of the matter. Nobody knows enough about this creature to even say where it lives, when it goes through, how it migrates, how it scavenges. We don't know enough about it because they're very, 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 very rare, and coming across a rare animal is picking out a needle in a stack of needles in the middle of a haystack. Once you do find the animals, well, then you got to find the Bigfoot in the middle of all these animals.
It's literally a needle in a stack of needles.
Right. It's a needle in a stack of needles in the middle of a hayfield because, the forest is the hayfield, and you're looking for that Bigfoot somewhere in the middle of all that animal mess.
Yeah, exactly. And it's really difficult. And you can find sign of a lot of things. I'm still working on finding that sign of Bigfoot that tells me where I need to look, and then hopefully I'll narrow down a timeline of when they might need to be there. But a lot again, people a lot of times I think they take a lot of maybe even what we say sometimes a little bit too literally. We're all sort of it's all guesses, and it's all I'll say hypothetical questions. I think that's a good way of putting it. It's not even a fully thought out question. It's just a hypothetical question. Maybe, if, then, possibly.
Exactly. And maybe we should start out each show that way, with the explanation of, if Bigfoot exists, then these are our thoughts on this particular subject matter. And that's really what we're doing here. We're having a topic of conversation between David and I to the public on our knowledgeable study of the subject of Bigfoot and the matters in hand. And that's really what's going on here. Now, let's take, for instance, the Russian Yeti, The Killer Lives. Now, did you get a chance to watch that, David?
I did not. I saw some of the bumpers for it, and I feel like I've seen the entire episode in that 90-second bumper.
Well, you actually did. And you actually saw most of the episode during Dr. Sykes' third episode, The Russian Yeti, documentary, because that's where part of that documentary footage actually started from. Very much like the likes of Ivan Marx, and this is how we're going to tie it in tonight, just very much like the likes of Ivan Marx. They basically took these Russian Yeti clips that have come out over the last few years, patched them together into docutainment. Okay, they took the Dyatlov Pass incident and they combined it with these Russian Yeti footage shots that have come out on YouTube over the last few months, and they took a production crew and entertained us with a thought of what happened to those 9 hikers that went up into the mountain passes and died, as if a Yeti had attacked them and taken them away.
Not a Russian brown bear, not a pack of gray wolves.
No, because at some
not
point
a Wolverine.
Right. At some point, they showed us a picture of a foot twice as large as any man's could have been. However, at every commercial break and every coming back from commercial break, it does say, this documentary contains elements of entertainment, much like The Mermaid, the
I was
new
going to say,
evidence.
didn't they prove mermaids like a year ago?
Yeah. So this was very much like the Mermaids video. The problem with it was whoever created the docutainment kind of mixed and matched the word Yeti with what they were trying to accuse was the problem over there in Russia with these 9 hikers. Part of it was talking about the Russian wild man, which is what we would kind of expect that to be, a lost tribe of Siberian humans who just haven't had any contact in forever and saw crazy people and killed them.
Neanderthal Denisovan.
Right, exactly.
Human.
But then on other aspects of it, they confused it with the Himalayan Yeti of Bigfoot, which is not the case of what they were trying to actually put forth in the video, but the producers and the voiceover and the information that they looked up on Yeti just was like, which one's which? I don't know. Let's just combine pieces of them all and make a good show.
Yeah, so I mean, they're looking like, I mean, they don't even look at the Almas, because that's like, that's Western Russia, like, like into like the European, like, anyway. So they're talking about something that's like straight up like, wild Russia, like Eastern Russia, right?
Yeah.
And so the Yeti is like Bhutan, right, which is on the other side of the Himalayas, which is not passable by anything that doesn't fly.
Pretty much.
So that's like no. And,
right.
and the Yeti eventually at the end of the Himalayas turns into the Yeren that might take it like a little jog up north and then come back over. So we're talking about, different cultural names even. Like there's no way that there is a Yeti culturally in Russia. Let's just put it that way. There is no Yeti in Russia.
Right, but that's just what these people are tagging it and calling it and sensationalizing it out
we
to
go
be.
with, it's Bigfoot, right? Like we were talking about the origin of Bigfoot. Like, well, okay, Yeti. Well, apparently that's just everything in Eurasia is now Yeti.
Right, Bigfoot's America, Yeti's over there. I guess it's the same size, so it must be the same, let's just blanket it that way.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, there was nothing valuable in that show. Dr. Meldrum's involvement in the show was simply an interview for what type of creature that might have done this type of thing, and basically they asked him for an explanation of what the Russian Alma or the Russian wild man might actually be, and he told the difference between those and the Bigfoot creatures, that they're not talking about apples to apples, they're talking about apples to concrete blocks.
But again, he's talking about the cultural definitions and as we describe them, and not something I want to say. Like, it's not talking about physical anthropology.
No,
like he's a physical anthropologist, but he's talking about cultural anthropology, which is different. The Sasquatch up here speaks to people and trades goods. It also steals children and does all these other things. Like, well, that's not happening right now. So, like, that's a cultural thing, and it's not the physical thing. It's probably so.
Right, he wasn't lending his credibility to the show as though he's endorsing the fact that some type of Neanderthal pre-human leftover captured and killed these 9 kids as they were hiking up through the pass. He's not saying that. Stop saying that he is saying that. There's no reason to lose any respect for the man over the fact that he did some documentary. We've got friends that do this all the time. There's nothing wrong with being a personality. But the difference is, the problem is, that I see, is that people are having a difficult time separating the entertainer from the scientist that he's been all these years. For all these years, anytime we see Dr. Meldrum on television, it's always been in some type of a sort of scientific format, on an expedition, as an expert talking about footprints and the tracks of Sasquatch, where now we're seeing him pop up on shows like this, where he's being hired for his entertainment and informative side of him, not so much more for his scientific method in the way that he actually deals with the subject matter itself. And that's where the credibility problem people are getting lost in. I admit I did the same thing. I made a call to arms with the whole Bigfoot North thing. But that's apparently what's going on now, is that Bigfoot is popular culture, and all these production companies are throwing money, and people are throwing money at the names that are out there that actually have a personality, and these people are agreeing to it. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with being an entertainer. I'm just saying, let's make sure that we understand the separation between the two ahead of time, so that all of a sudden we're not blindsided with Mr. Scientist, the guy who we all, well, you know, that guy over in Idaho State, you know, the professor over there, he really likes our stuff. He's been really, you know, you can go watch anything about him. Not all of a sudden, except the Russian Yeti, because that was entertainment.
Yeah, it's not the case. It's not, you know, like, and you know, I've had a personal conversation with Dr. Meldrum, and he's excitable. He's great. He gets like you start to talk like nuts and bolts, and he's like a big kid. He loves the subject, and that's great. And you know, like he'll make oversteps, and he'll make like, you know, oh well, if then, like, you know, it's fun. I do that all the time. I don't have, you know, PhD, so you know, so I can get away with that. Apparently he can't, but you know, like, but at the same time, like, you know, there are other people that are also interested in this topic, and it's funny because a lot of them actually just default to a lot of the old, you know, like Krantz style things, like, you know, but anyway, more and more, I think there are a few personalities that are coming online that are interesting, that are scientific-y.
Yeah, exactly.
Talk to.
You know, and people are like, oh, he's working with Hair Guy from Ancient Aliens. Well, so what? The guy's got a cryptid show, and they're doing some filming, and who better to have on the show than Dr. Meldrum and I guess Derek Randalls? And, you know, I'm going to say something else, too. Stop private messaging me about what went on in the lounge between private parties that should have never been out in public in the first place. I understand that there was some type of a statement made by one party to another party. It was eventually removed. I don't care to discuss it. It's not my place in the community to do so. If there was fuckery about, well, then so be it. It'll eventually come out. All I can say is I'm not one of the parties involved, so please leave me the fuck out of it. Thank you. That is all.
Indeed. Amen.
And with that, you know, next week is going to be Grover Krantz. Now, we did mention Grover Krantz a little bit tonight, and Grover Krantz did work with Ivan Marx on this Cripplefoot investigation and such, but that relationship was kind of always at a hand. You know, Grover was like the Reverend Jeff of their generation. He had a great voice. Did a lot of voiceover work for a lot of narration stuff in woodland stuff and wildlife stuff. And so I don't know really how deep it went, but Krantz's questioning of Bigfoot doesn't have any dirtiness that goes along with it like Ivan Marx does, and that's who we're going to get to talk about next week. And I know David's excited about that.
I am going to be geeking out all week getting ready for next week, because that's really like, and I'm not going to do it like me versus Krantz, like, because, you know, we have some differing opinions and what but that's fine. That's science. Now, you know, like, you know, somebody, but neither Krantz nor I, like, you know, like if we went head to head, somebody else is going to prove us right and wrong. Like that's basically, it's like, you know, so you just have to lay your ego down and be like, oh no, that's a good model.
Yeah. Exactly. So next week we're going to be talking Grover Krantz, and that's going to be a hell of a lot of fun because there's some really goofy things about Grover Krantz and what happened to his body after he died. And matter of fact, you can even go and visit Dr. Krantz right now. It's a very interesting tale, and I'm sure David will be excited to tell us about it next week. And really, guys, that's our time for this week. Bang! Went through over 45 minutes today. We've actually done a lot of content today. I enjoyed this one, David. How about you, buddy?
This was a good one. Like I'm loving going back over this, and I hope that there's some people that don't didn't have like the long term like coming up in the Bigfoot thing that are finding this interesting because like there are some really interesting places where a lot of like we're talking about origin, like not origin species but origin people of the Bigfoot phenomenon, which is really interesting. Like.
Exactly. It's like why
last week we did where did Bigfoot come from? Well, okay, we talked about Jerry Crew. This is where did the skepticism and like the background checking of all of our data come from? Well, it came from here. And it's funny, it's all in this like 60s to 70s realm, set the stage for all the modern Bigfoot researchers, and it's really interesting how this all plays out.
It's absolutely fun, and I'm really having fun exploring it with you. I think we're dealing with a damn Sam Squan tricky. Yeah, Grover Krantz next week, and that's pretty much where we're going to do it this week, folks. It has been an absolutely fun show this week, and I appreciate everybody coming out. For David Batdorf and myself, I am the Reverend Jeff Kelly. We want to thank you very much for watching the show tonight. This has been the Squatchers Lounge Podcast, Season 2, Episode 23. Thanks for watching, and may the Squatch be with you.